Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello and welcome to the WPBuilds.com podcast. This is episode 86 now, entitled Keeping Your Work Organised Inside WordPress with Corey Maass. It was published on Thursday, the 26th of July, 2018. Hi, my name's Nathan Wrigley from pictureandword.co.uk, a small web development agency based in the north of England, and I'll be joined in a little while by David Wormsley from davidwormsley.com so that we can have our pre-interview discussion, which this week is entitled How to Get Client Referrals. And then after the interview, we'll have our little ending fact entitled How Much Do Web Designers Earn? If you could go over to the WPBuilds.com website, I'd be grateful if you could do a number of things. Firstly, if you're listening to this episode over there, please click on the buttons underneath the podcast player and share it all over the internet. We've had some very nice iTunes reviews lately, and my understanding is that those really do boost the likelihood of this podcast being discovered by other people. So if you could do that, I'd be most grateful. Also, if you go over to wpbuilds.com/deals, you can find coupon codes for Toolset, MainWP, Malcare, BlogVault, and a few other plugins. Also, this week we have got Corey Maass on the podcast talking about his Kanban WP plugin. And I enjoyed it so much talking to him that we decided to do a webinar. So on September the 13th, it's still quite a way away, we're doing a webinar where he's going to describe what his plugin does. And if you go to wpbuilds.com/webinars, you'll be able to find the links to sign up for that. So I should say that we are talking to Corey Maass today about his plugin, which is a Kanban solution for WordPress. I won't say too much, but basically it's a task management solution, a way of organizing your tasks so it's easy for you to understand what you've got to do and when you've got to do it. And what I really like about this is the fact that it's built inside of WordPress instead of it being a SaaS app. So you purchase the pro version if you want, or you can use the free version on the WordPress.org repo and organize your tasks in lanes. Anyway, you'll find out all about that later. I'd just like to say thank you so much for listening once again, and I hope that you enjoy this week's podcast.
Hello, in this discussion, we're talking about how to get client referrals. So whenever, at least I see a community post, and by that I mean a Facebook group post, when someone's asking, how do you get your client work? I would say, I don't know if you agree with this, Nathan, about 70 to 90% of people say referrals.
Yeah, and certainly that's the case for me. I am more or less 100% referral based, but I have to confess at this point, as we always do, David and I had a chat before this, and I am really bad at this. So I have no pearls of wisdom at all.
No. Well, it's the same with me, and I'm the same, but it's all coming through somebody else's referrals. So I'm getting these indirectly, but I'm interested in this now because I feel I need to have a system as I'm going to go after my own work more at the end of this year. Yeah. So I thought your bunny rabbit costume that you used to wear when you went around the shopping centres used to drum up most of your work.
Very effective in its day, yeah. That was very good. And the sailor outfit also very good, yeah. Thanks for revealing that.
So anyway, I did a bit of research. Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. What has happened to you? Actual research. This doesn't bode well.
I know, it breaks the code. God. Well, when I say that, okay, what I did is I asked a question on our own Facebook group, and there were some smart people in there. One person I must shout out to, because he came up with most of the good tips, was Jason Rensnick, I think that's how you say his name, who does a podcast as well at res.com, so you might want to check him out. But yeah, so he gave a lot of tips in the group there, but I went to look up what was out there in terms of literature on this, and there is a book called The Referral Engine, Teach Your Business to Market Itself. and I I joined Blinklist again recently. So I listened to 10-minute or 12 minutes of the audio version of this book. So I got most of the main points, and we're going to run through those, aren't we?
So you really did push the boat out with the
Yeah,
research here, didn't you? Academic papers have been less thorough.
Yeah. So let's go. I'm going to go through the chapter, at least as they were presented on Blinklist. Is it Blinklist?
It's Blinkist.
Is it Blinkist?
Yeah, Blinkist.
I've been adding the L to that. Sorry.
Well, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, to add the L? It feels right, but I'm sure it's Blinkist.
Okay. Whoops. Okay.
Never mind.
First chapter in the referral engine is, well, there's a lot of the first section is just stuff that I think we know. But the first thing is that he makes the point about the fact that we are tribal as human beings. So we have this need to refer. We want to bring to our peer group things of value. So it's innate in all of us. So we need to sort of use that. Clearly, most people seem to do this, apart from you and I, Nathan. They seem to know.
Do you know what's Do you know what's interesting? As when you were talking about that, it really did occur to me that I exhibit this behaviour definitely, because as an example, if a plumber does right by me, or an electrician, or whatever it might be, like a builder or something, I will. When somebody says in a crowded room, "Does anybody know of a builder or something?" I will stick up for my person. And recommend them, and kind of feel this urge to enforce and impress upon everybody in the room. No, my guy is the best, which is weird. I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, and I think, if you're given good service, and you do want to lead, you want to get some of the rewards back of being able to bring something of value to somebody else. I think that's how it works.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
We've got a kitten in the house at the moment. It's my niece's, and the mice that it brings along is an example of probably that, It's referring mice to us.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting analogy. Yeah, but I do definitely do that, and it's interesting because I never thought of it from a sort of psychological point of view, and I didn't realise that humans had that. I don't know what it comes from, like altruism or compassion or something like that, but it never occurred to me that was a human characteristic. And also it sort of strikes me at this point that now that I know that that's a human characteristic, it sort of it strikes me as slightly disingenuous to abuse it.
Yes. The next chapter in this, I never said who the author was, is John Jantz, I think you say his name is, so yes. This book. Anyway, so his next chapter really just talks about that referrals come from standing out and following your purpose. So you need something that differentiates you from other business so people can talk about you kind of easily.
Okay, this is where it all starts to go wrong, isn't it, David? This is where you and I both, we can agree on step one because that's human nature. The next one is the stuff that we should be doing. Yes, of course, it makes absolute sense. Not that I've done a bar of it. I haven't really done that sort of stuff. What's the nitty-gritty of what we should do in that step?
I don't know. Give one example about. We were talking about this earlier. His example in the book called Blinkist gives the example of the Cheese Board Pizza Collective, which are in California, that unlike normal pizza shops, only offer one kind of pizza per day. So the reason they do this is it drastically reduces the costs, but also it gives them something that's different because of the fact that people go there, the quality is higher because it can reduce the costs of the ingredients, but still deliver, if you like, the pizza for the same cost. And that's their thing. So they have people lining up to, down the block to go and get these pizzas because they've got something that stands out. So I don't know. You said earlier, actually, the thing that does make you stand out is just you, and you make it very clear that you get me.
Well, I hadn't even really thought about that on any level, but yes, when people phone me up, one of the things that I do end up kind of trotting out is that it is me, it's just me. So, if you phone up with a problem, you get me, you don't get an answer machine. Well, you might get the answer machine, but ultimately I'm listening to the answer machine. So yes, I hadn't really ever thought of that as a sort of selling point. I more just use it because it irritates me when I phone up, let's say, the telecoms company, and I get transferred and never quite arrive at the person that I want. And I always thought the antithesis of that is what I want. I want to be able to speak to somebody that I know. And in my case, I'm dealing with fairly small web projects. It's nothing large on a kind of, I don't know, multinational or national scale, very, very rarely. And so I can talk to that person because usually there's one point of contact, and they seem to like that. But it's become very common, it's certainly in like the Facebook groups that I frequent, to see people trying to go after that. I'm going to call it a niche because that's what this conversation feels like, this step 2, if you like. You're going to do church websites, or you're going to do accountancy websites or restaurant websites, and try to stand out as the person that does that thing. I've never pursued that because everything's ticking along just fine. But I can see why that would be beneficial. I suppose the problem with that, in a sense that I see, is that if you just go after, say, church websites, how does the referral in the background work? Because presumably the guys in the churches don't really talk to each other all that much. The guys at this church talk to the guys at that church, and then these guys in this church don't speak to each other. I just don't know. Maybe electricians do get together and in some sort of secret cabal and talk to each other and refer, you should go to this website, guy. But I've never done it, but I can see the sense in it.
Yeah, I think so. Well, actually, chapter 3 goes on to the kind of stuff we expect, which is finding your ideal customer and catering to them. But I think it's bound up, because if you're going for a local audience, I think you could still have some differentiator. I think I've got one, actually, which I'm kind of developing as I'm trying to get my main site and get my own business. I've realized that a lot of the message that I'm saying is like, look, I don't want you to spend more money than you need to. So I'm packaging everything up so we can really work out just by the minimum. So I think that's becoming my message, is my standout thing. And it could apply to any kind of business without niching down. That's what I kind of stand for. I'm a bit about, well, don't spend more than you need to too early. That's my thing.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I utterly see the point of step 2, trying to figure out what it is that makes you unique. It just so happens that I haven't needed to do that. It's all just come along nicely without doing that. But, if I was beginning again, maybe that wouldn't be the case. So I can see why you possibly need to do that. And not only that, I think it would be a good idea to figure out who it is that you're aiming things at and use the language of those people. I'm in a Facebook group where there's a bunch of people trying to launch kind of multi-site installs. And this seems to be the thing in that arena, go after a particular thing, let's say churches or what have you, and use their language back at them. So, if you're selling real estate websites, you've got that vocabulary and the vernacular because you've built many sites for real estate agents or accountants. You can immediately cut out a lot of the waffle of tell us what your business is about because you already know. You've done 10 accountancy websites or 100 or whatever, and you can cut that conversation short and just say, look, we know what you need. Let's just work it out on a very fine level and go from there. And that probably would impress them.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall I go on to 4 on this one? Yeah, which is, and this is where I'm not so sure about this because this is the stuff that we get into with sort of more global marketing. But it's saying offer valuable content and gather testimonials from customers and provide a foundation that will provide a foundation for your marketing approach. So they're talking about a suggestion would be to write a big white paper for your industry. So we're getting more into the kind of online marketing stuff.
Yeah, the idea of doing stuff like that is very appealing, and I'm sure it's got its benefit. Again, I'm just not the right person for sort of proselytizing about this because I just don't do it. But I've receive all sorts of interesting automated stuff all the time. When I've been on a call or something, 5 minutes later it drops into your inbox and they want to know a little bit more about you. And yeah, I can see that this has absolute value. I just don't do it. Sorry, I'm being the worst kind of host of this particular episode, but I'm also trying to be brutally honest. What do you do?
Yeah, well, I don't do. Well, we both do something to put our names out there, so at least we're attached to it. But I don't know. It's the later part of this book where I think it starts to make me think about things that I could actually do. Because the next bit, in fact, chapter 5 is about leveraging online ads, which I'm not so sure I'd invest in that.
I think you've got to really know what you're doing. I've dabbled with it many, many years ago. And again, because the benefit immediately didn't make itself obvious, I kept going for a little while and dropped off the bandwagon. But it cannot be denied. Google wouldn't be in business unless it were successful. I just simply don't have the time to invest into doing it. But yes, I can entirely see the point. And I guess it's also about getting the message right and filtering those ads down so that they reach the right audience and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of people who make a business out of doing just that, selling that service, the ads or the finding the right niche or whatever it might be. Yeah.
He does also in that chapter talk about speaking engagements as well and, spreading out your sort of content through those as well. But you know what, we were talking, weren't we, earlier about the fact that anybody could probably make a good living doing website building just in a smallish town if they built sites that would accommodate all of the type of people in there. And they did referrals well. So in a way, you've got two sort of sets of referrals here. You've got this kind of niche marketing and online thing where you're trying to grab people globally. Or you could just concentrate on spinning out from your friends and family outwards, couldn't you?
Well, that's kind of how it's worked out for me over the years. It's just I just build little local things mainly. And it just sort of keeps itself ticking over because of the point one that you made. People like to refer people. And you're right. If I had aspirations of, I don't know, a posh car or a bigger house and all of those kind of things, and probably I would have to have a different personality, in all honesty. I would try to do some of the previous steps that you've mentioned, but because everything's ticking over so fine, I'm not that bothered. And I think you're right. You can, if you just go for the local businesses, assuming there's not seriously amazing competition in your area, I think it's possible. But then maybe that's geography. I'm in an area where it works for me and people actually talk to each other where I live. And so referring is a real thing. Maybe in certain parts of the world or cities, that might not be quite so straightforward.
Yeah. I think this book for me really moves into what's important to me when we get to about, if Blinkist is a proper representation of it, is by the time we get to chapter 7, which is facilitate customer network referrals through a systematic referral process. And I think that's what we're missing, isn't it? We don't have a set pattern. We don't. It mentioned in this one is the act of giving gifts as well along the way. When you reach certain milestones in a design.
Yep. I don't have the process nailed for this at all, which is kind of why it's hysterical that we're talking about it. But I think the process, if you were serious and you wanted to generate lots more sudden new business, I think this referral thing has to be a process. And I'm sure it would involve autoresponders and some kind of CRM with, tagging of clients at various stages and like you said, schmoozing a little bit with current customers so that in some way they realize there's some benefit or incentive for referring people onto you. My accountant does a great job of this because it's very low key, but I really like it. And when we first went to him and said, we'd like to join your firm, and he did his pitch, he just dropped it in very casually. Every new client that you bring in our direction, we'll give you a bottle of wine. And it's a nothing, but at the same time, it's a something. And every time I do refer a client, they must ask the question, where did you come from? And presumably my name gets mentioned. And then randomly every few, I don't know how often it is, we'll just get this bottle of wine. And I think that's really nice. I like that. And it doesn't feel like I've sold myself out in any way because I like the service I get. I wouldn't use them if I didn't. I can't speak for whether they're the best, but it works and I appreciate what they do. And so maybe that's something I should explore, giving something away. And we were talking earlier about it doesn't have to be financial. You don't have to give the person $100 or £100 or whatever the figure is that you attach to it. You could give the referrer something, give them something off what they're already getting. So if they're on a care plan, give them a free month. If they're and then give the person that they've referred 5% off their website build so that everybody's happy. You referred somebody, they got something off, you get something off, we get some work. Great.
Yeah, that's a Dropbox approach, isn't it? It works really well, I think. The only thing that slightly worries me about all of this, in some ways, I think this chapter was largely talking about the principle of kind of underselling and over delivering, and that idea of sort of standing out, that people get unexpected things. And Jason, who I mentioned earlier, said that he it has a process. When we reach certain milestones, it'll give them some coupons, so maybe some Starbucks coupons or something that they're not expecting.
Yep.
So maybe these little add-ons as part of the service stick out to somebody, which might lead them to want to say, these were really nice to me, these people.
Do you know, that is a really powerful thing. I'm just thinking about a client. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just thinking about this one client that I've been dealing with for months, who's been absolutely wonderful, really nice person. Every time there's been a problem, if it's been my fault, they've been accommodating. And when it's been their fault, I've felt like, being nice back kind of thing. And it just suddenly struck me that if I sent them something out of the blue that they weren't expecting, how nice would that feel? It would, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think there's something in this. This has been a theme really for our discussions recently. Just this sort of constantly remembering that we're a service industry, and I've really started to tune into how the sort of service I get from people, and what makes a difference. So. Yeah. So I think there's something in that. But yeah, I don't know about that. But I think there has to be a system. You have to decide, I'm going to do something at these certain points.
Yeah. I like Jason Resnick's system. Yeah, whatever it is, create little milestones and track that and stick to it. I suppose the easiest thing in the world is to set it up and then kind of forget about it. That would probably be what happens for me. But, here's a milestone. I don't know what those things would be. Is it like if you've referred a client, or is it if you've referred over £5,000 worth of business or £10,000? What you've got to work out what those things are and what they get in return. And you've also got, I suppose, judge whether or not you're trying, in effect, to create affiliates who are becoming a constant supply of new things simply because of the rewards that they get back. And if that's the case, that feels very different from normal referrals, which is what I get, and it suddenly steps into, complete strangers could start to do this, and then how do I keep a track of that? I don't know. The only way I can imagine doing that is financial.
Yeah, and I think if you do give a clear financial rewards for somebody passing on the details, they are going to pass them on. As we know with competitions, it's the idea. You spread the word randomly, really, just because you might get rewarded for it. So I think then you need a system also to know what to do with those referrals when they come in, because you need to make sure that you screen out the people and whether you reward the people for sending you kind of not suitable clients. So yeah.
I don't even do the basics though. I've just got a website going a couple of weeks ago, and it's all fine and everything's okay. And it's this period of we're best mates at the minute. Everything's going well. This would be a great time for me to drop an email. Yeah, even if it was some kind of an autoresponder or handwrite an email. Just to say, look, if it's worked out for you, which I know it did. Is there anybody else that that might benefit from what we're doing? And if so, I'd really appreciate it. And I guess at that point, you'd start to wonder in that email, do you spell out the incentives that will give you some cash or a bottle of wine or whatever it might be, and try to be honest about it? And I also think that honesty would certainly work for me. If I was giving cash away, I think I would say that. In the email to everybody, just sort of say, look, you're going to get 5% off because somebody referred you. The referrer is going to get a bottle of wine, and we're going to get some new business. Everybody should be delighted with this outcome. So, get on the phone and thank them because you're getting a cheaper website, and you get on the phone and thank them because you're getting a bottle of wine, or whatever it might be. And everybody should be mutually patting each other on the back. It's never going to work out this way, though.
But maybe you don't even need to get. I mean, something that we often easily forget to say. I mean, I wonder if you're a person that you're really pleased with now, who you're getting on well with, whether you've actually said anything to them. Because just boosting somebody up and just saying, you've been fabulous. I've actually loved working with you. So if you know anybody like you, please refer them our way, because it's been so wonderful. So without even giving anything, you make them feel good.
Yeah, you know what? That email has to be handwritten, doesn't it? You can't write that email and make it feel inauthentic, because if you say thank you in an autoresponder, you're basically not really saying thank you, are you?
No.
So and make sure that email comes across as obviously handwritten as well. Wow, Dave, I've got some good ideas from this one. We started with nothing. I've got now something.
We're coming to the end. We got the next one is actually about building strategic partner networks.
Yeah.
So you can share your target market. And actually, this is something, again, that somebody picked up when I asked him Facebook. Jim Galliano, former guest of ours, said that he does some of this. He actually links up with some other people in the similar market.
Yes, that's right. I remember him saying that. And I think that's clever. It's like you made the analogy that if an electrician comes round, not only do they leave their card, but they leave a plumber's card as well, and just sort of say, look, I've got a good friend if you ever need any plumbing work. Nobody's going to be put out by that, are they? But if I was to drop in the name of a graphic designer, or the, I don't know, whatever, it could be a hosting company or something, it doesn't have to be somebody that you know, I'm sure they would take that in good measure.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one because I haven't worked out. I'm still thinking about who could be a partner for me, because you've got to find the right balance in the amount of customers you're going to share and principles and the sort of value of a customer as well in there. So I haven't worked out who I could team up with at all on that. But,
well, I bet you're going to be inundated now.
Finally, I think chapter 9 was the last one. Make a plan to receive referrals and thank those who make them.
Oh, there you go. What we just mentioned just a moment ago.
Yeah, exactly. So that was pretty much the nub of it.
Okay, there we go. I like it. That was a good chat.
Yeah, we had. Do you know what? All the way through this, it was making me think of somebody else's comment on the Facebook, who was talking about Seth Godin's point about we're pretty clueless about knowing the lifetime value of our customers, and it's linked up. We should have a chat about that at some point.
Right. In that case, let's pause this one, but with a mind to doing the Seth Godin talk at some point in the future. Right. Are we done?
We are.
Okay. In which case, I will say, let's go to the interview. Hello. Welcome to the interview part of the podcast. I'm glad you've stuck with us to this point. This week, all the way from America, North America, we have Corey. Now, I want to say Corey Maass, but I notice it's Maass. How do you pronounce your surname, Corey?
I generally pronounce it Moss, like the green stuff on a rock.
Okay.
But, your pronunciation was just fine.
Oh, good. Anyway, hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, great.
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. Yeah, we've got Corey on the show today because, as we have in many occasions on the past, we've got somebody who's developed a plugin for a particular niche, and obviously WordPress is just full of these wonderful plugins. And today Corey's come on to talk about something which I'm going to mispronounce. I'm going to call it Kanban WP because I have a British, Northern British accent. But you're going to pronounce it correctly, no doubt. What is the name of your product, Corey?
Well, if you're in America, you're likely to say Kanban, which is not wrong. The rest of the world, I think, taking their lead from British English, would say Kanban. And the proper Japanese pronunciation, I think, is Kanban. It's very staccato.
Right.
But nobody can really say it wrong unless you inject, P's and Q's or something.
So long as you can spell it, you're fine.
Exactly.
It's spelt Kanban, and then the website is kanbanwp.com, which is all very straightforward. So it's Japanese. I had a sort of sneaky feeling it was Japanese. When you say it's Japanese, how long is this? Is this like super ancient kind of thing? Are we going back to the era of the ninja or something like that?
Not quite. The 1940s and 50s.
Okay.
Toyota, as a auto manufacturer, or were they making cars then? As a manufacturer, anyway, invented this technique, this method for managing the manufacturing process. So getting lost in how many parts do we need for each piece as we assemble it, all that kind of thing. They developed this so that, at a glance, you can see the overall status of the project. We call it project. I'm not sure what they would have called it then. Maybe it was a car.
Yes.
But we're most familiar with it now just as a common methodology for project management, but then it actually solves lots of other problems too.
It's something that I would almost bet that every single person who's listening to this has encountered before in some way, shape, or form. It's a visual way of organizing tasks into, and I'm going to call them lanes, but I don't know if that's the right word, because it feels to me almost like swimming, a swimming pool divided
That's
up
exactly
into lanes. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm impressed with
columns or lanes. So Kanban has been adapted by dropping some buzzwords here. Agile project management, and so you've got within Agile, you've got these other sort of processes, methodologies, Scrum, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And Kanban has been adopted by Agile as a very friendly, easy way to get started, to visualize the status of your project overall. And in particular, in their vernacular, they say lanes or swim lanes, which I think is great because it's such a visual,
Yep.
you can immediately picture it.
Yep. So if you were to stare at a screen with a Kanban app open, what you would see, probably going from left to right, is a set of cards, if you like, organized into horizontal columns. Not that columns are ever vertical, but there you go. Sorry, vertical. Stop. I'm not even going to try to get myself out of that one. I've just messed that up. Never mind. So they're organized into columns, and you put the priority things at the top that you want to take notice of, and you can rearrange them, but also you can move them from column to column by dragging them along. And each column is representative of a status in the project, I suppose. So it might be, for example, lead, and lead might become, a win or something like that, or it could go from incomplete to complete to finished, whatever. Did I sum that up very well, or do you think you could do a better job?
Yeah, some of the common use cases, project management. I usually use the lanes of do it next, in progress, and done.
Perfect.
And then you also brought up, the sales, if you were going to use Kanban to track sales. So you might have new lead, and then first contact, and then, sales contract is out.
Yep.
And then, sale won or sale lost, or, or there's a lot of the times there's another column. And this is the amazing thing about this process is you start with 3 lanes. And then as you're going along, you're like, well, I could really use another lane for follow up in a week. Mm-hmm. So then you just add another one, and the other ones move over, and then you drag the cards in as you need to. So it's really a neat process, a neat method, because it grows with you.
I've tried so many different ways of organizing the tasks. My tasks are relatively straightforward. The complexity isn't in the number of lanes. For me, it's just trying to manage 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 20 things all at the same time. But I don't have too many statuses, so the lanes are not so significant for me. There's normally 2 or 3.
Right.
But I just love the fact that it's all there and it's visual. Every other system that I've ever used, whether it's some kind of to-do app or some integration with my email client or whatever, none of it works. It doesn't work in my brain. My brain has to see the little card, and I have to move it along and watch its status change. And for some reason, that methodology just sticks for me, which I guess is why it's popular. Now, there's a whole bunch of SaaS apps, software as a service apps that offer this functionality. So I guess that was my first real question: is why would we wish to use a Kanban app inside of WordPress? Is there anything that you've got to say about that? What does WordPress bring? How do they align? Yeah.
So for me, it started with simplicity. I've already got a WordPress website. Now it makes sense because I'm a WordPress developer. And actually, the reason that I built the plugin in the first place was my intention was to use it on every site that I was building, because this way I could invite the client to sign into the website they're already signing into, right? I'm building them a website, and they're going in and starting to add pages or blog posts. And this way we could track the project overall from within the one website. So instead of sending them to Trello or sending them to LeanKit and them going, what the heck is this? And having to learn another interface and all that, they've already got credentials to sign into their own website. So that was actually the original intent or use case for me. And now we've found a few other advantages. The most recent one is it's actually come up under GDPR.
Oh, I was wondering about that. Yeah.
The whole privacy thing. If you self-host an app, well, then you know where all of your data lives because it's in your own database. And honestly, 2-3 years ago, I certainly hadn't thought about that use case, but it's become a popular one. And then the other obvious advantages are just integration into, as more and more people use their WordPress site as a control panel for their business, where they're collecting leads or tracking sales or doing whatever, managing users in any number of ways, having an app that is tightly integrated just makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that. Is there just stepping back a bit and thinking about you as a developer, is there anything to be said for WordPress as a platform for the development of such products? As an app platform, has it been a
this
frustrating
is one of my favorite
experience?
Topics.
Oh, good. Is it frustrating? Is it really good? Has the REST API helped? How do you feel about the future of WordPress as an app building platform?
So there are kind of two branches of this. One is actually building web apps on top of WordPress, building SaaS apps. And I actually give a talk at various WordCamps about this. One of which was filmed, and you can see. So it's a year old at this point at Portland, Maine, and then I just recently gave the talk again at Belfast in Northern Ireland WordCamp, and which was a lot of fun. I'd never been to Northern Ireland before, but so I find that WordPress is actually a great platform for building SaaS apps on, which is one instance of WordPress hosting an app that people sign into, and then the other side of this is more like what I did with my Kanban plugin, which is building an app that is a plugin and then it gets distributed. And I've honestly found huge advantages to both. If you're building a SaaS app, or even if you're using a plugin and you're just using WordPress to host that plugin, WordPress has advantages of already solving a lot of the big problems that every app encounters. So user management, registration. If I never have to build another reset your password page, I will die a happy man. Because as a person who's built apps for years, it's just these are the little patterns, the little features that you have to build over and over and over again. And WordPress just does it for you. Database management, user management, page routing, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's all the things that we associate with basically almost every website has. And then certainly every web app has. You need user management for almost any app. That's kind of the point. It's kind of what makes it an app. You have users sign into a website. So for me, there's huge advantages to using WordPress.
Do you feel that sentiment is kind of held widely amongst I'm just going to say developers, not WordPress developers?
Oh, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. No. But WordPress has this bad reputation. Some of it deserved, a lot of it not. And I come from a non-WordPress development background, and so I can understand, looking at PHP frameworks, they've come a long way. And WordPress, because of its insistence on being backwards compatible, doesn't conform to a lot of new best practices, but it still works and it's still stable and it's still proven. And all of these things to me are huge advantages. Yes, there's new features and things that I would love to take advantage of, but I can live without, because for me, the goal is not writing the perfect code. The goal is writing code that solves a problem. Yeah. And I can do that within WordPress the vast majority of the time without conflict, and frankly on code that's a lot better tested than a lot of newer frameworks.
That's a good point. Yeah, the amount of eyeballs on it is tremendous, isn't it?
But it's really, it's always really cool to slag off old old technology.
Yeah.
Do you like my use of the Britishism there?
Slag off. Yeah, it's good. It's perfect. That means to just sort of rebuke and berate. So I guess, are there any people that you've managed to persuade amongst your developer friends that this is a good thing to build on top of WordPress, or are they all to a man? No, I'm never going to do that.
I think so. I've certainly given the talk a number of times and received a lot of good feedback and questions, and I think I've at least made a number of people reconsider. For me, this is one of those, there's a name for this fallacy, but I can't think of the name of it. But basically, because I'm constantly thinking about apps and WordPress, I see them everywhere now.
Yeah.
But it might just be because I'm looking. But I definitely have found, this all started with basically just a thought a few years ago when I was using WordPress as a CMS and not much more, maybe a little bit of e-commerce, and met a few people who were using it for hosting SaaS apps and or at least building beyond just using it as a CMS. And for me at the time, I've always been had an entrepreneurial streak. So I would work on WordPress all day, and then nights and weekends I'd be using other frameworks to build SaaS apps. And I'm going, this is silly. Can I combine these two? And I've found the answer to be yes. So I think that more and more people are starting to look at it this way. I think as all of the common, there are 50,000, 60,000 plugins in the plugin directory that add widgets and solve sort of all the obvious CMS problems. I'm starting to see more apps or more plugins as apps, if you will, that solve bigger problems like, social media management or project management in my case. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more of this using WordPress as a dashboard, as a control center for your business.
Yeah.
Because you've already got the website, and hosting is caught up and is now pretty solid, obviously depending on your hosting company. But there's no reason not to sign into one website that is probably your marketing website, to also manage projects or to track sales or to do whatever it is that your business requires.
That's a really good point. And I think that in the future, I think you're absolutely right. It seems to be that we're right at the beginning of something, in the same way that if you probably rewound the clock, 12 years or something, 13 years, whatever it might be, and plugins just started to come out and people were sort of all excited. Oh, yeah, imagine the range of things we could do with these plugins.
You can make it snow on Christmas Day.
Right. Yeah, that's how it went. You can kind of imagine the future where a whole bunch of developers, for simplicity's sake, and like you say, for the fact that you don't have to reinvent the wheel for things like user authentication and so on, and routing of the pages and things like that. The benefits of using it, well, we'll see, but I hope that's what happens. Having said all of that, and that really could have been a podcast all by itself, so we should probably have you on another time just to witter on about that. Let's go back to your Kanban WP. Presumably that is a plugin. You host it. It's not anything to do with SaaS. It's just a plugin that you download. Is it on the WordPress.org repository?
Correct. So there's the free version is in the plugin repo. That should get you most of the way there for whatever it is that you need to do. And then we've got a paid pro version that adds gravy to the turkey or icing to the cake or whatever food
I've never
analogy
heard gravy to the turkey, but I like that. I'm going to use that. So what's in the free version? What do we get if we were to download the free one? What would we see? How would it work? And then we could talk about the limitations that you strip away with the pro version thereafter.
Sure. So this is actually changing a little bit. The free version right now gives you one board and a lot of dedicated functionality towards project management. And then the pro version adds on extras like different field types that you might want to add, being able to color code your cards, sending email notifications, things like that. However, we are a month or two away from launching a new version, version 3.
Yeah, you are. It says the 5th of July on your website, 5th of July 2018.
Yep, that's when we're rolling out to betas anyway, so people can start trying the new version. With the new version, we're actually including a lot more of what are currently the paid for features, rolling them into the free version, because I don't want to limit people in what they can do, and I also want to encourage people to keep using the WordPress solution that I've got instead of going to a Trello or a Lean Kit, other solutions. So coming up, you will be able to do or to have multiple boards. It will include email notifications, commenting, a lot of the features that you'd kind of expect. And then with the new Pro version, we're taking it to the next level, looking more towards business or teams that are doing project management. So we're going to be offering charts and graphs and getting more into sort of what you might associate with the business features of such a tool.
So if you were to download the free version at the moment from the WordPress.org repo, you get the one board, but you can kind of do everything you need to do if it's just you, but you can't integrate other users and things like that. Or did I misunderstand?
No, you can integrate with other users. It's just a matter of, so a lot of bigger teams want to have multiple boards, right? So you might have a board for project management or sales tracking. You might have a separate board for managing development, let's say. And this way you can sign into one place and you can manage these different workflows all from the same interface. And that's where you might want multiple boards.
Okay, so if we go now to have a look at the Pro version, the best way to describe this probably, if you are listening to this now, would be to go over to kanbanwp.com/add-on/Kanban-Pro, and you are including, now forgive me if I've got this wrong because of your new update in a few weeks' time, but you're adding on task comments so you can sort of communicate with other people, and is that like a comment attached to a particular card, so you can have a comment thread within a card itself?
So you can basically discuss the card as you make progress on it. Yep.
And there's an unlimited amount of comments that you can place within that card and just sort of, yeah. Okay, great.
Technically, there is a limit. I have seen that limit reached.
Oh, wow.
Where I had a customer who, the customer was using Kanban for tracking, manufacturing horse saddles, actually. And every email communicating with the person who placed the order, they would copy and paste the email in as a comment. Now, of course, when you are corresponding with somebody, the previous email, is still kind of in line below their recent. Yes. So you can see this, see where this is going. Yeah. After 10 comments, you actually have 30 comments or whatever, each one exponentially larger. So he did contact me after a while saying, why is this falling over? And
it's because you're using it wrong.
I said, I see the problem here.
Yeah, that's nice though. You can comment on particular cards. That's good. And then the next feature would be advanced user management. Presumably, you're able to. How does that work? Is that like allowing people to see certain boards and not other boards, or certain cards and not other cards?
That's correct. And most specifically, what I added that on for originally was to have a client view, because a lot of people were using the board, but needed to be able to show it to somebody without that person going in and starting to click around or add new tasks arbitrarily.
Can you let's say, for example, that you add a card, can you disable the viewing of that card from a particular WordPress role then? So or a particular user, you could say, I only want this one to be seen by I don't know, let's say the editor role, but I want such Simon, the user Simon, to be able to see it.
Not right now. Mm-hmm. I haven't found that there's a common use case for showing and hiding at the card level. Mm-hmm. But higher up, the, all the comments or an entire board, or what we're introducing with the new version is the concept of hidden fields. So you may have some fields that everybody sees, a title, a description, a file attachment, something like that.
Yep.
And then some people will have access to, essentially you click a little arrow and it expands and shows more fields, where you could, add a grading, or, write other details down that you may not want everybody to see.
Okay. And then you've got the ability also, the third of the 6 things in the Pro version is the ability to add, it says details and attachments. I'm sort of focusing on the word attachments as the thing that would be most useful for me. What's details as opposed to attachments?
So in this case, it's essentially extra fields, where you can, again, go in and add other data points on each card. So if you want to add a price associated with the sale, or not only assign a card to a person, but you want somebody else to be ultimately responsible for it, or or is the client of this card, or that kind of thing. And then yeah, just as you said, attachments that. And this will be included in the free version coming up, to some degree anyway, where you can slap on an image, or another very popular use case is actually job applicant tracking. And this is where we can talk about some of the integrations. But basically, if you're hiring, you can slap a Gravity form or a Ninja form on your website, and everybody who fills out the form, presumably people who are applying to this job, a card will be created for each one. And in this way, their resume can get attached to that card too. So then you can, comment on it, discuss each applicant internally, and then this is where you'd kind of move them across the lanes, and the lanes might be, applied, first interview, second interview, and then hired, something like that.
Yep. That's cool. I can imagine, things like CVs getting uploaded in PDF documents, but also in my case.
Oh, sorry, right. CV, not resume.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. In my case, it would be a question of, very often it's a question of me sending screenshots and things like that, or, color palettes or something like that, so that the client can see it, as opposed to the client sending me stuff. Yeah, but we'll come to that in a minute, especially the Gravity Forms thing, because I think that's really interesting. Another thing is notifications. Is that like an email thing, or is that notifications from within WordPress?
No, emails.
Okay.
To let you know that something has changed without you having to sit there and watch the board.
And then do you get a link directly to the task at hand, or do you have
That's right.
Yeah, you don't have to scrub through it all and find the exact one that you're being notified about.
Right.
Great. And then the other one was multiple boards. We mentioned that already. And probably the most important one, the one that everybody's actually going to obsess about, is colors.
You'd be amazed.
Yeah.
It was the first thing requested. When I built the free version, this is 2 years ago or more, and the first thing people wanted is, how do I color code this?
That would be the first thing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it would be the first thing. Absolutely
it's the
crucial.
Simplest little things, but we are human.
Yeah. And then I found myself looking at your documentation. So / documentation, there was a whole bunch of stuff. And, I think you've done a great job in writing lots and lots of articles, essentially to answer all the frequently asked questions, and how do you do this, and what does this do? But the one that got my, well, there's 2 that got my interest particularly more than anything else. 3, I'm going to say 3 now. Was the first one was Gravity Forms, because I thought that was quite nifty. Because obviously, if you're somebody like me and you're familiar with Gravity Forms, throwing that stuff together is really quick. So, if a client needed a job application, I can within a minute throw up a Gravity form that has all the fields that sucks that stuff in. And then I read through that article, and basically you go through a process of installing the Gravity Forms integration plugin, and then you just match fields up. That's
exactly right.
Yeah. So, here's the name field, match it to the name field within the board. Here's another field, and match it up. And then you can assign a sort of status to it with like a hidden field and things like that. I can totally see why somebody would get this just for that. I think that's a killer feature. It doesn't actually mention Ninja Forms, but you did. Is that a feature that you've built in?
Yeah. So in addition to Gravity Forms, we also have a integration with Ninja Forms.
Okay. Yeah, so we can all imagine that, building a form and handing this one over to a client, and it's like a full-featured productivity suite with all your forms and everything getting uploaded. I think that's brilliant. Yeah, the other thing, which I didn't really explore too much, is the tasks thing, searching. Obviously, for me, if I've got like 400 tasks on the go, how does that actually work? What's the process that you go through if you're trying to find that gnarly little task which is buried?
So as simple as a search field ever present on the board. Obviously, you need to remember some aspect of the field to search for. But if you can, it's live and immediate. So as you type it, cards show and hide themselves depending on what you've typed in.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of the more integral pieces, so much so that it has its own keyboard shortcut so that you can jump straight to search and just start typing so that you can find that card that you need and start interacting with it.
Well, that's the sort of killer feature in a way, really, because although these things organize themselves around and they look beautiful on the screen, it's still a pig with whatever system you're using. Because like me, I just don't clear things out. Lots of things stay in there that should have been moved to and then ultimately deleted. And so I'm scrolling, and the search is the feature that helps me out. And then once I found it, I can then start to to deal with it. But that's great. And I'm pleased that's there.
And that combined with, we actually separate the concept of searching from the concept of filtering. Mm-hmm. So you can open up a filter and say, only show me the cards that are assigned to me, or only show me the cards that are red, because everybody likes color coding.
Yeah.
And then two things. One, and then obviously you can search from within that. But also, when you apply a filter, it actually changes the URL. So you can bookmark essentially those filtered results.
Yep.
So you can, and I do this in almost any productivity app, is I look for that kind of thing where, show me only what's relevant to me and then bookmark it. And so instead of going to, the dashboard or whatever of the app, I'm going to click on that bookmark and at least usually start with only the data that pertains to me, because obviously that's what's most important to me. That's usually my starting point.
Yep. With the actual card itself, what are the limitations on the kind of data that we can actually put in there? I mean, you've mentioned comments, and we've mentioned, clearly Gravity Forms, which is mostly text, will be sucked in. What other sort of field types have you got?
So right now you've got time tracking, which is not like a live clicking timer. But you can go in and basically say, I think this, you can estimate, I think this is going to take me 8 hours.
Yep.
And then as you make progress, you can update, how long it's taken you. And it gives you a little progress bar. We have, do we now? I think so. The concept of dates, which are going to be a lot more tightly integrated in the new version, where you're actually going to be able to see things on a calendar and get into Gantt charts and all that kind of
that's good.
Deep nerdy views.
Yep.
Charts and graphs and arrows and circles and
any representation of colored blobs. Yeah,
exactly. Which honestly, it's really fun to nerd out with that stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But other very popular fields are assigning cards to users, but also even just different ways to use users. So you could say, well, this card is assigned to somebody, but the client is this other user, but the QA person who will look at it in a week is this other person. And so you can do lots of different assignments. And then right now we've got a dedicated field called projects. But this is where, again, when I first started, I was thinking very specifically about project management, and the app has definitely expanded beyond that. So projects and a couple of other field types are going to get rolled into sort of a ubiquitous tags field that can be used for, I'm finding, so many things. So it can be used for project, it can be used for status, it can be used for urgency, it can be used for client. If you're using it as a CRM, this could be a list of your clients' favorite colors. I mean, there's almost unlimited possibilities for this. And the more we get into it and use it ourselves, the more creative we're getting. So I'm hoping to start writing little tutorials and blog posts as we go along, as we keep finding these interesting use cases.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at in the documentation at the field types, and I'll just sort of go through them because it's actually more than I would have imagined was necessary, which is great. So you've got your obvious text field, you've got an image field, which is quite nice. So you can put images, not just maybe it's like a mnemonic, just some way of reminding yourself. What else? We've got date fields. We've got date fields which count up and count down, so it can be a certain amount of time till a thing or a certain amount of time from a thing. You've got this to-do list, which is, a bunch of ticks, a tick. How to describe it? Bullet point list, but with ticks, if you like, and you can
check boxes.
Yeah, check boxes, and you can tick them off as you go through them. So that's quite nice. So within a card, you can have a bunch of check boxes. And then you've just got this thing called a list of things, which is like a drop down as far as I can see. Then you've got list of users, and as you said, list of colors. That's a lot going on. Yeah, it's really impressive.
And this is, it's kind of amazing, and it's one of those things that I still struggle with a little bit, and this is part of why we're introducing the concept of hidden fields. Is I've now seen customers who are adding 50 fields to a card. Yeah. Which to me, if they're happy with it, then obviously I'm happy for them. I couldn't work like that.
No.
So yeah, we're now introducing at least the option of here are the fields that are the most important, and then here are the ones that you might interact with once in a while, or they might just be referential. And we might actually down the road introduce in the new version, you can interact with a card directly on the board, and so in the context of all the other cards, or you can open up a modal where you're going to deal with. That's where you're going to see all the comments. But you're going to see the same fields. And so I've been debating about even introducing the option of fields just being on the modal, so that you'd sort of have 3 different layers of immediacy as far as getting to the data that you need.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the card should be small. That's just my take on it. Essentially all I do usually.
I agree with you, but not everybody agrees with it.
I kind of just want this tiny little card which has a title, essentially. And then when I click on that, I like the idea of something else opening up, which gives me additional information, whether that's the card itself growing or, like you say, a modal that pops up. That feels like the right way for me to do it. But obviously, if your users are not doing it that way, fair enough. What's the... I was just having a little think, and a moment ago you mentioned the fact that you've got this sort of time integration where you add, you write in what you've already done on a particular thing. So you might say, I've done an hour's work on this, so I'll type in 1 hour. Do you intend to sort of add things like that in the long term? Have you got a way off in the distance roadmap for things like time tracking and so
on? Definitely. I want it. I mean, it's something that I could use. I end up using right now. I use Toggle, which is just another app, and there are a million of them out there. So we might end up doing it just an integration with other tools. Yeah. We might end up building something into the app. I'm a little hesitant to put that much weight on a WordPress install of continuous ticking.
Yeah.
But it's certainly something that I'm going to consider.
Yeah, the thing is, you could end up like with invoices and all sorts, couldn't you? And suddenly, it's not about Kanban anymore. It's some sort of it's trying to be everything to everybody all at once. Yeah, it's great. Do you want to tell us about the pricing as a sort of way of perhaps potentially rounding it off?
Sure. So the Pro version is $150 a year. Unlimited. That includes unlimited sites, unlimited users.
Okay.
Just to keep it simple.
Okay, so it's just one price, yeah.
Yep. And I think so. Basically, I encourage everybody to start with the free version, see how that fits your needs. Expand to the Pro if you want the extra features, and then we are thinking about 6 months or a year from now introducing kind of a Beyond Pro, a business version, which I think, again, will include more of these when you get to the point where you've got a dedicated project manager, or there's more people involved in the process, generally there's more features that you want. So we're starting to consider what some of those extra features might be, but that's a ways off.
Have you? I never know quite how to ask this question without sort of prying the lid on something, and I don't want you to reveal anything that you don't want to reveal. Let's just keep it simple. Is this a product that's been successful in the past and you will continue to maintain into the future?
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good. One word. That'll do it. Yeah, that's great. Well, we've just seen so many things in WordPress kind of come and go, and sometimes go in a very quick and rapid way that disappoints people.
It's heartbreaking when you see a good product fall by the wayside or go away altogether. But no, for me, this is I struggle with shiny object syndrome just like every other developer, but this has been my core focus for 2.5 years or more.
That's good.
And my intent is to keep growing it until hopefully it pays all of my bills and I can retire rich to an island.
Yes. You've got the same dream as me. Fabulous.
I mean, that island might be England, which is a little
no.
depressing.
Don't retire to this. No. Oh, that's really nice. So if you would like to help Corey retire to a small island somewhere, what you should do is you should go over to kanbanwp.com and then click on the links to get the Pro, as it says, $149, $150 for a year's license. You can go and get him his flight at least, and then the next person can get him his first week. Yeah, thanks for coming on and talking to us about productivity. That's great. Is there anything, just before you go, we always give everybody an opportunity to sort of self-promote, if you like, or tell people where they can be found on Twitter, on the email, whatever?
Sure. Like you said, kanbanwp.com is the primary place to find out about the product. And if you've got any questions, email me through the Contact Us forum. It does say us, but I read them all. You can also find us, obviously, on Twitter at KanbanWP. And me personally, Corey Maass, spelled MAASS. Oh, and there's an E in the Corey.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Corey,
okay.
MAASS.
There you go. And that's more me spouting opinions, whereas we try to keep the Kanban WP account a little more professional.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and we hope to speak to you soon. Take care, Corey.
Thanks for having me.
So with today's ending fact, I thought we would just take a look at how much web designers earn, because somebody asked this one quite recently. So I looked up the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they've got a figure. Just go back to last year, 2007, but the median pay for that year for an annual was $67,990 per year.
67,000.
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's quite an important word there, isn't it?
There is a missing important word there. And the hourly rate was $32.69 per hour, which I thought was interesting.
So it's basically $68,000 and 34, should we say, dollars per hour. And that's based upon kind of like a working week of 40 hours over about 50 weeks of the year. Of course, that doesn't take into account the requirements of, I don't know, having a bit of time off for sickness, or any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure that most people that I know are going to be charging a lot more than $34 an hour for the reasons I've just mentioned about needing a bit of time off and needing to, just basically live. I don't think most of us would be going for that rate.
No.
It's a funny subject. The Brits don't really talk about what they earn very much, do they?
No, there was a British report that I read, and roughly it's actually just rounded up to 33, and that kind of equates to £25, and £25 was the top end of the minimum rate that people chose. So anybody below, or 25 or under, was in the 1% of people. But this was people self-reporting their earnings, so maybe it's very different to what the Statistics Bureau would report.
Yeah, indeed. Or I just wondered if the document would just say, mind your own business. It's none of your business what we earn. Yeah, it's interesting though. So $68,000 is the average for a US web designer. I suppose at the top end of that will be, really hardcore, amazingly clever people, and then there'll be people just beginning, and somewhere in the middle is that sweet spot. So yeah, it's interesting.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing that. That's cool. As always, thanks for listening all the way through to the end of the podcast. If you fancy subscribing to anything that we do, there's a whole load of things like the Facebook group, there's an email that we put out, there's a messenger chat bot and things like that. Go to wpbuilds.com/subscribe. And at the moment, I'm also recommending that people go to wpbuilds.com/deals, where you'll find a bunch of percentages off various WordPress related products. That's it. All for us to do now is fade in the cheesy music and say it's goodbye from me, Nathan Wrigley.
And goodbye from me, David Walmsley. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.